please consider helping. PayPal.me/LeBoy Legal Fund. Go ahead, Debra.
All right. Okay. So, since Andrea's not on right now, what we're going to discuss tonight is what's going on in Nevada. We're also going to discuss another court case that I have brought up several times on the show with a man by the name of Schaeffer Cox, who is wrongfully and illegally...
Spread the word. Who's this?
Hello, this is Rudy Davis.
All right, Rudy. I'll let her know that you're here.
Thank you, sir.
Known criminal who infiltrated his militia, went in there and basically, tried to entrap him. And even the evidence that they used in court was completely one-sided, like we're seeing happen in the Nevada courtroom, where the defense has no defense at all. Nothing is able to be brought in that would defend the people that are innocent. This is going on across courts in America, all over the place. This isn't just an isolated incident with the Nevada guys. This is going on. Schaeffer Cox is from Alaska, but this is going on in every state. This is going on in every federal courtroom. This is why they uphold a 98% conviction rate, because they will lie, they will steal, and they will cheat to get what they want. And that's sick. That's not a justice system. Do we have Rudy on? Oh, we do have Rudy on. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Rudy Davis. I don't know a lot about Rudy, but I do know that he has the Lone Star 1776 YouTube channel, which I have seen so many of his videos and just realized today that this is who he is. And he has been following the Schaeffer Cox story very closely, so I know that he has a lot to add to this. Welcome to the show, Rudy. We are so happy to have you on tonight.
No, thank you, Deborah, for giving a platform to Schaeffer Cox. My wife and I have been following his case for about a year and a half, and it is so encouraging to see people across this country to waking up to see what has happened to this. He's an exceptional young man, and he has spent 6.5 years in prison for crimes that he did not commit, and he was absolutely entrapped by what I would just absolutely call a wicked Federal Bureau of Investigation in conjunction with the Department of Justice. And it's not an isolated case. Like you said, the FBI and DOJ has gone off the rails. But thank you again, Deborah, for giving a platform for Schaeffer and for his cause.
Absolutely. I write to Schaeffer. Schaeffer writes to me, and it's amazing and it's encouraging, his letters. And you are right. He is an upstanding man. I mean, it gives me goosebumps. And sometimes, I guess when I wrote to him this last time, I must have kind of sounded down because he's telling me, don't get down. Everything is going to be okay. He's just very encouraging. Wonderful human being. And it's such a travesty to know his story. Can you tell us, I heard some things happened with the Ninth Circuit this week. Can you kind of fill us in on that? Because I'm not sure I quite understood what happened.
You bet. Schaeffer's in the middle of an appeal, so this is certainly a very intense time for his legal efforts, and we were hoping that his conspiracy to commit murder of federal agents as well as solicitation to commit murder of federal agents would be vacated. They only vacated one of the charges, so that's certainly a step in the right direction, but we still have a long ways to go for Schaeffer's cause. So we don't want anybody to be thinking that this is a time to be resting or a time to be feeling good. He still has the appeals court, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, did affirm his conspiracy to murder federal agents. And so we need to work on that. That's yet one more hurdle that we need to get over. And they're going to re-sentence him on all his counts. He also had some weapons misconduct charges, which is absolute joke for anybody that has looked into those. They said he had parts for a grenade, and if you had a tube of JB Weld and you had some powder in the garage, if you have a dummy grenade, which I don't know any redneck friends of mine in Texas that haven't bought a dummy grenade at an Army Navy store, but they said he had the parts for an illegal explosive device. So all of the charges that they brought against him are bogus, every single one of them. I believe he's innocent of all the charges, but the conspiracy to commit murder of federal agents is still what is sticking, and he will be re-sentenced on that. He currently has 310 months, Deborah, which is 25.8 years, which is an atrocity for a man like Schaeffer. But He's going to be resentenced. We don't know what will happen during resentencing. We're asking people to, lift Schaeffer up in their prayers, to write Schaeffer a letter like you have done, and to write also letters to the judges, the Ninth Circuit judges, and to tell them that we are aware of what's happened with Schaeffer. There's a huge backdrop, and there's so many facets of evil that we could talk about when it comes to the Schaeffer Cox case, whether it be secret CMU prisons or entrapment by the Federal Bureau of Investigations. The list goes on and on.
Absolutely, and the treatment that he's getting in this prison, this secret prison, I mean, it's horrible. They're always messing with him.
It's no accident, Deborah, that just a few days before his oral arguments, and that happened on August the 16th, right? So just a few days before oral arguments, and the face of the prosecution is a man by the name of Stephen Scrocky. He wants to become a federal judge, by the way. And for anybody that wants to know the details about Stephen Scrocky, there's a man by the name of Ray Southwell. He's a very close friends with a man by the name of Norm Olson. They both have experience in setting up militias, not only in Michigan, but Alaska. They were close friends of Schaeffer before he was thrown in prison. But Ray Southwell has written 20 articles about Schaeffer Cox and his experience with Schaeffer Cox. And it's very insightful because it comes from someone who kind of has the inside perspective of the Alaskan political landscape. And Ray Southwell has just laid out on the table, and it's just incredible the way he writes about Stephen Scrocky and how evil he is, some of the the wickedness that he's done as far as withholding exculpatory evidence. He's manipulated trial testimony, and it's provably so. And I encourage everyone to read Ray Southwell's writings about Stephen Scrocky, because it'll give you an idea about the depths that our Department of Justice will go to silence people that they consider inspirational threats to the establishment.
Right. And can you tell our listeners, because I know you know a lot about his story, can you tell our listeners the name of the guy that infiltrated his militia, what his background was, and how this all transpired with these charges?
Oh, it's
really brought the purpose.
Yes, it's absolutely incredible, Deborah. You asked, what is the background of the guy that infiltrated his militia? Let's examine that phrase first of all, because it sounds like he's James Bond infiltrating the dangerous mafia of the American criminal organization or something. What this guy did is he showed up to a barbecue, because Schaeffer said that the militia is anybody with a conscience and a gun, and he wanted everybody to join. So Gerald J.R. Olson is his name. I call him the $300,000 whore. The reason I call him a $300,000 whore is because on the witness stand, when he testified during trial, they said, how much money do you expect to make from the government for what you've done in your work in the Schaeffer Cox case? And he's testified on the trial $300,000. So he got paid, I think, $77,000, but it was more than just payment. He also had a lifelong history of criminal activity. He ran drugs, Deborah, for let's wait for it, the Hells Angels. Now, it sounds like I'm exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. He ran drugs for Hells Angels. He had a lifelong criminal history. He would tell little old ladies that he's going to build them a septic tank. They would pay him half up front, and then he would disappear with the money and say that the parts never arrived. He rented a tractor. I think it was a $100,000 tractor. He stole it. He took off the nameplates and put on a different nameplate, and a trooper pulled him over. And he was facing a life sentence of his own, and that's when the FBI recruited him and said, well, if you can go in and infiltrate the Schaeffer Cox militia, which means showing up to a barbecue, we will take away your life sentence, and you'll give a lifelong in the witness protection program. So he's living happy right now, I'm sure, on the government dime, Gerald J.R. Olson, who I call the $300,000 whore. But that's the type of people that the FBI uses to entrap patriots and Christian men who stand up for our liberties. And he's not the only informant. There were several informants that came after Schaeffer Cox, but he is certainly one of the worst.
Wow, that's horrible. And so nobody really knows where this guy's whereabouts are. Does he have to testify in any of when Schaeffer goes to court? Does he have to testify anymore?
I would doubt we ever see his face again. He's become such a notorious FBI informant. They've probably got him in a witness protection program, and who knows what kind of situation they have him under. I kind of doubt that any appeal hearings they'll bring him back. But, this isn't unusual for the FBI to do something like this. If I could recommend to your audience, Deborah, there's a book out called The Terror Factory, Manufacturing Terror, by the FBI. It's written by the author by the name of Trevor Aronson. And, when the FBI, they get paid, millions upon millions, maybe even billions of dollars by Congress to root out terrorism within the United States. And when they cannot find a real terrorist, what they end up doing is creating one. They'll just go out and entrap somebody and set them up, and they'll make a terrorist where there is normally not one. And that's exactly what they did to Schaeffer, because he was so strongly speaking out against the establishment, speaking up for liberty, and he was exposing a child pedophile ring. Schaeffer was exposing drug running within law enforcement. And not only that, but Schaeffer's future in this country, there's no doubt that he would have been a very popular political figure within this country that would have been on everybody's mouth. Everybody would have known the name Schaeffer Cox had they not derailed him and put him in a secret CMU prison. He had almost won a seat in Congress in his early 20s. Very articulate, inspirational speaker, very knowledgeable, homeschooled, the son of a Baptist minister. I mean, when he got in front of a crowd, he lit it up, and he knew how to talk about liberty. I would call him, just the male version of like a Chris Ann Hall. He was very, very inspirational.
I agree. I would get goosebumps listening to him, and he'd always say, we don't have to bow and kiss the ring. And in his letters, he always says, he goes, no matter what, yeah, they locked me in the hole for however long. He goes, but no matter what, I'm still not going to bow and kiss the ring.
He doesn't compromise, Deborah. He's so inspirational. He's written so many letters from prison, and I kind of understand the goosebumps because actually I get them too. When he writes me letters, it's like I feel like I'm reading the writings of one of the founding fathers that really understands liberty. He wrote a letter to a young girl named Ruth, and Ruth had written him first, and Ruth talked about a dream that she had where she woke up in prison, and she was she was in a panic, right? Because she said, I was innocent and I woke up in prison, and I kind of got a feeling for what you feel like. And Schaeffer wrote her a letter back, and it's been posted on his main website, but it talks about living a life wholeheartedly absent of fear. And it's an incredibly inspirational letter, Deborah. And when I read it, I was like, wow. And you talked about him not kissing the ring. He simply does not compromise. Schaeffer does not understand the meaning of the word fear, and he is an inspiration to all of us because he knows no fear, and he will not compromise, and he's been under severe torture. There is no doubt in my mind that since he's been in the CMU, they have done some sort of mind control. They have attempted mind control techniques on him. They have 4-point shackled him. They have done temperature variations to the extreme. I'm sure that he has been without food and water for long periods of time. And the conditions are horrific. And there's no transparency into these prisons, and there's no oversight. But yet he still remains strong in his spirit. And it's absolutely amazing when we do get a chance to hear from him. The writings will blow your audience away. I mean, if you get a chance, please go to his website. If nothing else, seek out and read some of his writings, because I feel like I'm reading classical literature in a modern day man.
I actually have. I have read Schaeffer Cox's letters on the air a couple times now because they are absolutely incredible. And one of his letters, he was talking to the Patriots in Nevada because he knows what's going on, because I'm on a Patriot Mail group where we're writing to political prisoners.
Praise God.
And so he's heard through some of the others in this group what's going on in Nevada. And so he's given advice to these guys, right? And one of the things he said that was incredible to me was he said, if you have a wife and she wants, he said, this stuff isn't made for women. It's just not. He said, still love her, but love her from afar. And he was talking about, and if she wants to go, let her go. That's the best and most decent thing you can do as a man. She shouldn't go through this with you. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, because I know how much he loves his wife and he loves his wife and kids. I mean, he still loves them.
No doubt.
And the fact that he is so unselfish, he is just so selfless that he's okay with that because he knows that he has to endure this, and he's okay with that. I don't know. It's just it's
very powerful, Deborah. The analogy that he gave to me, and it'll stick with me for a long time. he said the analogy is that imagine a family, mother, father, and 2 children swimming out in the ocean, and they're having a good time. It's a beautiful day. The sun is out, and everybody's enjoying themselves for a swim in the ocean. And a shark comes along, and the shark grabs the father, right? And so the father is in the mouth of the shark. He said the best and smartest thing that the mother and the wife can do is to grab the 2 children and to swim away. Just get away from this situation, and protect the kids. And he doesn't need to be a part of this fight. Now, Deborah, there are people that God calls to be shark fighters. And so I feel that you right now having this broadcast, speaking up for the Bundys, speaking up for, Pete Santilli and, Scott Drexler, Eric Parker, you have been called to be a shark fighter. We don't necessarily run away. There's a statistic, and as heartbreaking as it is, I've heard, and I believe it's true, that when a man spends over 3 years in prison, his wife will leave him over 98% of the time. And so Schaeffer's just being realistic. Some women are simply not cut out to be a part of this type of fight. I saw the same thing in Ken Hovind's family. I don't know if you're aware of the Baptist preacher Ken Hovind, who was in prison over 9 years. Sometimes the women are just not cut out for this sort of fight, but other women and other men are called to be shark fighters. And so we swim out and we want to help and support Schaeffer, and we want to call the evil out exactly for what it is, that it is absolute pure evil that this man has been separated from his family. We don't blame the wife for taking the kids and going to safety. We blame the shark, and the shark needs to be held accountable. And in this case, the shark is our federal government, along with the Department of Justice and the FBI.
And you know what's so sad about that, Rudy? And I think about this all the time, and I've stated this on the show. These are American people working these jobs. These are other Americans. How can they they have to know that they're lying. They have to know that they're doing things that are deceitful to get their way. How can they justify this in their own mind? I just don't get it. I try to get in the minds of these people, and I cannot imagine that money is so powerful and so sick and so evil that it's what controls.
Yeah, Deborah, the Bible says, though, the love of money is the root of all evil, and you're going to hear this over and over again. I don't know if you saw the video where Detective Payne arrested that nurse, but he said he's been in this job 22 years. Have you seen that video, by the way? If not, your audience definitely needs to check it out.
Oh, yes.
Okay, it's absolute.
Yes, I've seen it.
It's horrific that officer thinks that he can arrest that nurse like that. I don't know what he was thinking, but these people, they think it's my job. They think they're actually doing a duty and that it's part of their job, and that's how they bring home their paycheck, and so they will follow orders. It's all for them. It's all about following orders. It's never about questioning authority, and you're gonna see that excuse over and over again. I was just following orders. That's what I was told to do. And that's how they bring home their paycheck. And because we have the Federal Reserve that prints out all of this fiat money, they can control the behavior of all of these minions who cannot think for themselves. They follow orders. And if their orders are to arrest a nurse, to put an innocent man in prison, to confiscate guns, to protect an abortion clinic, that's what they'll do. And so it's absolutely horrific what's going on in our country. We've got to get the truth out. We will never be silent. We will never be quiet. And, we've got to educate the people. Jury nullification, right? That's one of the things that we promote as much as we can. The jury is more powerful than the judge.
And I wanted to get back to the $300,000 whore.
Yes, ma'am.
How was it that they got a prosecution out of this guy that has such a terrible background and obviously isn't worth, I wouldn't think his credibility is worth a damn in court. And obviously, it convicted Schaeffer Cox. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Gerald J.R. Olson is incredibly charming. I'm right. He's had a lifelong history of approaching people and making the case that he is their friend. He wants what's best for them, and that's why he did what he did. Right? He's a very charming guy. I mean, when he was Schaeffer, I saw video that was sent down from Alaska on the Discovery hard drive evidence where Gerald J.R. Olson is sitting across the breakfast table from Schaeffer Cox, and he's helping babysit the children. And I can't imagine that Schaeffer would realize that he's actually sitting across the table from a devil. And so when he got up on the witness stand, he told Stephen Scrocky that yes, I have had a lifelong history of crime, and yes, I did run drugs for Hell's Angels, and yes, I did, scandalously take all this money from these little old ladies. But I'm telling you the truth now, and I've turned my life around, and I've made a decision that I'm going to do what's right from now on. And I was given an opportunity to help stop this dangerous militiaman in Alaska. And, so Stephen Scrocky not only used his charm, but he also used withholding exculpatory evidence. There was a tremendous amount of evidence where not only was Schaeffer set up by Gerald J.R. Olson, and he refuted, Gerald J.R. Olson as one example of what he did, because keep in mind, for Gerald J.R. Olson to get paid the tens of thousands of dollars that he already got paid, $77,000 is what he testified to, and he expected to get paid another $300,000. And then not only that, he's not going to serve any jail time, but he's helping Schaeffer move some guns and ammo, which is, in Alaska, that's just as common as, peas and carrots. And he picks up
right.
Yeah, it's no problem, right? Everybody has guns and ammo in Alaska. That's not an issue. But he picks up a bucket, and then Gerald J.R. Olson, in the audio that he knows is being recorded, he says, "Oh my God," and he makes a big stink like he found live grenades. And he testified in court that those were live grenades, but yet there was no evidence. There was never any live grenades recovered. And to put Gerald J.R. Olson's testimony as having any credibility that Schaeffer had live grenades, and Schaeffer has told me a million times that he did not have live grenades, he never wanted any live grenades, and that they had drop weapons that they stuck in his hand. And another thing that Schaeffer said that was incredibly intuitive, or not intuitive, but insightful for me, was when Schaeffer said it's not illegal to shop for a silencer, right? You can actually own a silencer if you pay the $200 tax stamp. So there is audio recordings where Schaeffer is actually talking to people about a silencer, but that's not illegal. It's not illegal to shop for a silencer. It's illegal to own one if you don't have the $200 tax stamp. So they tried to spin all this, and they overstated the evidence. They withheld exculpatory evidence, and then they manipulated the testimony from the witnesses. And they absolutely set Schaeffer up in that trial. He did not get a fair trial, and this isn't the first time they've done this. For anybody that's familiar with the Senator Ted Stevens case, they actually got a false conviction on Senator Ted Stevens 8 days before his election. He had been serving in the Senate for over 40 years, and they caused him to narrowly lose the election because of all the scandalous Department of Justice accusations. There was a whistleblower that came out in Senator Ted Stevens' case named Chad Joy, and he blew the whistle on the FBI about all the evilness they were doing. There's been books written about it. And not only that, but then Senator Ted Stevens dies in a mysterious plane crash a few months later. Now, the same prosecutor who led the Senator Ted Stevens case also was leading the Schaeffer Cox case until the news story started to break about how bad he was and all the evil that he did in the Senator Ted Stevens trial. He was rebuked by the judge, and the judge said from the bench that out of the 26 years I've spent on the bench, this is the worst behavior I've ever seen. He was the lead prosecutor in Schaeffer Cox's case, and he turned it over to Scrocky. And then he provided Scrocky information and instruction from the sidelines. It was reported by Schaeffer and others that Joseph Bottini would lean over the bar and whisper instructions into Scrocky's ear as the trial was going on. And so, for anybody there's a backdrop here is what I'm trying to get at, and I'm probably taking a much longer way to describe it, but the backdrop is that the Department of Justice has a history of doing this. They have done it to a United States Senator. He got a conviction. The judge had to overturn the conviction even after Senator Ted Stevens was dead. And not only that, but do we think that it's the first time they've ever done anything like this? I mean, no, it's not the first time. They've done it in the past, and they did it to Schaeffer.
Yeah. I'm sure they've done it many, many times.
Yes.
I think there's people that we just don't even know about that are lost away. Rudy, what do you think the answer is? What can we do to turn this around?
I think prayer is the nerve that moves the muscle in the arm of God. I myself am a Bible-believing follower of the Lord Jesus Christ. I believe that we cannot be silent. I believe jury nullification. I have a friend named Bob Smiley who stands in front of courthouses and passes out jury nullification pamphlets.
I know.
Oh, good. Well, then, yes, we got a common friend. I love Bob Smiley. He is very passionate about that topic, and he has come to many of our phone calls and talked about that topic. We've got to spread the word about jury nullification, and it will stop them dead in their tracks. And we believe that, that's also the answer for the Bundys and, Scott Drexler and Eric Parker and Pete Santilli and as well. So we can't have fear, right? We've got to empty all the fear of our life in our life that would stop us from speaking up. We've got to write to these prisoners. We've got to educate our brothers and sisters in America and say, hey, is this the kind of country that you want to live in, where your government and your FBI can set you up for your political beliefs? And it's not the kind of country I want to live in. And we got to expose these people. We got to call them out by name. Stephen Scrocky, I consider a reprobate on a fast train to hell for what he did to Schaeffer Cox. and we got to expose him. And not, he wants to become a federal judge, Deborah. If Scrocky gets his way, not only will, he put on his resume that one of the reasons he should be promoted because of his role and participation in taking down the dangerous militiaman that the Southern Poverty Law Center identified as a dangerous threat to our society. So these guys don't get penalized for doing the wickedness. They get promoted, and we've got to put a stop to it. Now, you ask what the answer is. I've given you my best shot. I'm willing to listen to others, but I think it's going to take an intervention of God, because it's gotten so corrupt. It just looks overwhelming. But many times when we read the Bible, the situation looked overwhelming, and we know that we serve a mighty living God.
Absolutely. I have to agree with you. The Southern Poverty Law Center aren't they funded by George Soros? Is that true? Do you know?
I wouldn't be surprised in the least, but I can tell you they are some of the most hateful, deceitful, sickening people I have ever read. I mean, that whole website is full of lies, and they lie. They just, everything they say, you can just take the 180 degrees, and it's the exact opposite,
Right. Yeah, I agree. Well, I appreciate you coming on tonight. I don't know if you have any last minute things you want to say. I have Andrea Olson on the line.
Okay.
She's going to come on. Kevin, that's Eric Parker's wife. So she's going to come on and talk to us about the Bundy Ranch. Do you have any last minute things you want to say to our listeners out there, Rudy?
Yes, we continue to lift up Eric Parker and his family in our prayers. We praise God for the life and testimony of Eric Parker. He's another patriot that seems to not know the meaning of the word fear. For Schaeffer Cox, for your audience who's just heard about him tonight, please go to whoframedSchaeffercox.com. Please go to yearofjubilee.com. Read his articles, educate yourself about his case, and tell others. We've got to put a stop to this corruption in our judicial systems and our Department of Justice and our FBI. The only way it's going to happen is if the people rise up. It's not going to happen because a fancy lawyer did a fancy legal maneuver. It's going to take people on the street yelling at the top of their lungs that we've had enough. And praise God for the Bundys, Pete Santilli, Eric Parker, and Scott Drexler. We lift them up in our prayers as well.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on. You can stay on the line and listen if you'd like. We would love to have you back on again to do some more updates with Schaeffer, because I'm definitely going to keep in contact with what's going on with him.
You bet. One last thing, if I could, Deborah, real quick. There is a video that just recently came out this week. It's called "Department of Injustice." The man who produced it said that he felt called by God to produce it. Nobody paid him any money. He didn't have any Federal Reserve filthy lucre. He didn't get no bonus from doing it. He did it because he felt called to do it. I recommend all of your audience, please go to YouTube and type in "Department of Injustice," the untold story of Schaeffer Cox, and it will blow you away as far as the exposure of the evilness. And thank you for the time tonight to cover Schaeffer Cox, and I will hang around for a little bit. And thank God for what you're doing, Deborah, and thank God for the people that are standing up.
Awesome. Thank you, Rudy. And I do believe that we do have Andrea Olson Parker